Hello and welcome to Catamount Radio and the Catamount Community Connection. Our show brought to you by the Rutland County Agricultural Society, which has brought you the Vermont State Fair at Rutland since 1846. We just finished with the 178th fair, and I know on behalf of the Board of Directors of the Ag Society, we want to thank everyone who turned out for the fair this year. From what I understand, it was an extremely successful fair. I don't know about record-breaking in terms of attendance, but it was very well attended. They got a break with the weather, and everything was great. So thank you on behalf of the Vermont State Fair for your attendance at the 178th fair this year. The program is a weekly Sunday show. I'm Brian Collamore. I host the show. And we speak with community leaders each week from the business, professional, nonprofit, and political arenas. The goal of the program to inform and make our listeners aware of things that are going on in Rutland County and throughout the state. Maybe legislative stuff in some cases based on a new law or regulation that went into effect. Many of those had a July 1st start date, so hopefully folks have caught up with that. I know as we are recording this on Friday, the 23rd, and it will air on Sunday the 25th. By Monday, tomorrow, the new configuration in terms of the road diet on both Woodstock Avenue and I believe on North Main Street will have taken place. Today's probably the first day of that for folks that are on their way to work, or I guess not school yet, but school's going to start very quickly. So we can maybe just mention that there will be a new way for you to travel up and down Woodstock Avenue, at least from Stratton Road down to Route 7, and then from Route 7 up north from that intersection. And hopefully everything works out. In my view, the jury's still out on that, but we'll see. We'll see. And I did promise the mayor that if it did work, I'd be the first one to tell him, because I didn't think it was basically a good idea. We tried it 10 years ago. Anyway, we're past that, and let's see what happens. We have on our program today, I want to welcome in both Chrispin White, who is Director of Events for CEDAR. And every time I say CEDAR, I feel like I have to explain what that is again, and maybe I should. It stands for the Chamber and Economic Development of the Rutland Region, so CEDRR. Or sometimes we just say the chamber because people pretty much understand that. Exactly. So Chrispin is in charge of all of the events for that. And we're happy to welcome in, I think for the first time, Mose Cassaro today. And you're a financial guy, I know, so we'll be talking a lot about that. Yep. But let's give Chrispin maybe the opportunity right off the bat to tell us about, I know one event that's coming up is the Whoopie Pie Festival, yes, but I'm sure there's other things coming up too.
Definitely. Thanks for having me, Brian. Yes, we're going to talk about the Whoopie Pie Festival, which is Saturday, September 14th, from 12 to 5 in downtown Rutland, and this will be our third year. And I mean, the Whoopie Pie Festival, it's a street party. It's an opportunity to have the community come down and engage with each other. Last year, we had over 5,000 people attend, and they saw Dreammaker Bakers create a 770-pound whoopie pie. This year, their goal was to create a 900-pound whoopie pie, but the record is 1,062 pounds, and they decided they're going to crush that record this year.
No kidding.
Yes.
Wow. So this is news to me.
This came down the pike probably Tuesday, so they decided their team was ready to make it happen, so they are going for the world's largest whoopie pie on September 14th.
And if I'm correct, I think it currently is held by folks in Maine.
In Maine. So Maine has called us out, saying that they're watching us, and if we break it, they're going to be ready to see what they can do to get the title back. But it might take them a little while.
Do they hold it in a downtown area too?
It's a more rural area that they hold it in.
Okay.
But it's a more wide open space that they have their festival in. But yeah, we're looking forward to not only having Dreammaker Bakers create the largest whoopie pie, but it actually looks like a whoopie pie, where Maine's whoopie pie was kind of chopped up and it didn't present well.
Okay. So, well, I hope we break the record on the 12th.
Definitely.
So, anything new with that this year?
Well, it's going to be still family-friendly activities. We're going to have face painters, street performers, caricature artists. We're going to have people walking around in stilts. We're bringing back the Red Trouser Show from Boston, which is always a big hit. Carpenter and Costin is working with Come Alive Outside to put the Green Street out in front of Wonder Feet Kids Museum. So we will have activities there. And this year we're going to have 20 other whoopie pie vendors. Last year we had 11, and we ended up, because of the large crowd, running out of samples early on. So this year we have more vendors, and we encourage the vendors to bring a lot more samples. So we are prepared to see hopefully 6,000 to 7,000 people in downtown Rutland on the 14th. And also, because of the excitement around this event, it has been designated as a Vermont signature event by Vermont Tourism. So they're helping us publicize this as well. So the marketing is going all up and down the East Coast. We're getting whoopie pie vendors from all up and down the East Coast, and it's going to be an incredible event.
Okay. What time does it start?
It starts at noon on September 14th, goes till 5 o'clock. The hope is that we will have judging for a variety of different whoopie pie categories around 4 o'clock, and then the weighing of the whoopie pie at 4:15.
Okay. And obviously the streets are blocked off.
Yes, we will have Merchants Row blocked off, and we will have Center Street, Upper Center Street, and Lower Center Street blocked off, because one new thing we have this year, the Mint and their staff is putting together a soapbox derby, which will be from Upper Center Street down to Wales Street. They are working with a group of individuals who are creating soapbox derby cars at the Mint to race on that day. Wow. So it's going to be a fun event. Yeah. Okay. Looking excited for that one.
We'll get back to maybe some of the other events that are going on from Cedar, but let's turn the microphone over to, is it Mose or Mose?
It is Mose.
Mose, yep. Okay. And you are, I know, a financial planner, have a lot to do with capital investment and that kind of thing. So yep. How long have you been in Cedar and in the Rutland area?
I've been in Rutland since July of last year. I've been working with Cedar since February of last year, end of February of last year. But a little less of a financial planner, but in the financial markets, I would say more on the startups and the venture world. So what I'm working on is essentially Startup Rutland. So Startup Rutland is an initiative that was launched by the Chamber, by Cedar, which is supported by the SBA grant. And our goal is essentially a dual goal to both support startups and founders that are tech-enabled based in Vermont, and attract them to Rutland, as well as attract talent on a national scale and hail them over to Rutland to be able to provide support, to be able to work with them for local job creation, et cetera. How we're tackling that and how we went about doing it is we partnered with Generator. Generator is one of the largest accelerators and venture funds in the world, and primarily based out of the Midwest. They run a little over 100 accelerator programs for startups every year. This is the first time that they're entering the East Coast. I call these franchise accelerators, the name brand accelerators like the Techstars and the Plug and Plays and the Generators of the world. So if you look at the map right now, Vermont or New Hampshire or Maine or Greater New York, we don't have any of these. So essentially we launched this partnership with Generator last October. We just finished our application process and interviews. So we got applications from a little over 50 applications. 60% came from Vermont, or Vermont-based startups and founders. 40% came from pretty much internationally and nationally. We interviewed people all the way in China, in Russia, in Germany, everyone willing to come and make the trip to come to Rutland if they get selected. We also did selection earlier in the week. Mike Dungetts was nice enough to stop by and share his input and take part in selection as well. Now we have the final 5 teams. I have sent the invites out to them as of yesterday. We'll be putting out a press release to announce who those teams are next week. And this will be a 7-week acceleration process that we'll go through, which will include mentoring, advice, as well as up to $1 million in resources through the Generator umbrella, as well as support from the Cedar and the Startup Rutland umbrella as well. After the 7 weeks, we will be going into a showcase event, which will be the larger event that we'll probably talk about a little more as well, which is the annual meeting piece of the Chamber that we will have a pitch event at. But in addition to that, I'm more on the venture side. So in addition to being the Director of Venture Capital for Startup Rutland, I'm also a program partner, program manager at Generator, as well as an investor and mentor for them. And I'm also in the process of launching Rutland's inaugural venture fund, RDF Ventures, in collaboration with the SSBCI program.
And are these, for the most part, very small businesses types, entrepreneurs that are coming?
So when we say small, the goal is leaner teams, so smaller teams. So these teams are, the largest team that we're going through selection is about 12 folks working for them. The smallest is about 2 people. However, on the revenue side, they're post early ideation. Some of them are doing $5 million a year. Some of them have raised millions in grants or in venture funding. More than half of them are venture backed already. Venture backed meaning venture capital is another asset class similar to raising traditional loans. Venture capitalists essentially come in and they give you money in exchange for equity, and they are willing to take the risk with you. So a lot of the companies that we know, whether it's Facebook or Airbnb, and a lot of the big name companies, they were all venture backed at one point.
And are they going to physically come to Rutland, or is a lot of this, able to work from home kind of thing?
So in the beginning, or with Generator, typically when we run these across the U.S., we do a hybrid or we do a virtual model, but our goal essentially is to attract them here. So in addition to having them come here, we're also going to be providing year-round support. That means some of the teams will be offered year-round space at the Hub Coworks, which is the Chamber's co-working space. So the goal is to have them come here, and the ones that are successful and the ones that can find value for them to stay, create local jobs, and we'll be able to provide support on that end as well.
Yeah, I mentioned that because and Chrispin well knows this from our past discussions with both Lyle Jepson and Bill Lucci and some of the other folks from Cedar, and also the mayor and, gosh, everybody we talk to. Housing, such a problem. And so if we're actually drawing people into the area to live here and work here, there's an intersection already with housing, and we're working desperately, not as quickly as we might want to, but we need to find some housing for folks too, right?
Definitely. And that's something that we knew, or even when I first relocated here, that was one of the things that we have taken to every board meeting, that when it comes up, if we're going to attract talent, retention is really going to come from them being able to stay here and for everything being feasible on that end. And we're working with some stakeholders involved that are going to be collaborating on the housing end as well for these founders.
Yeah, okay. And we've got some plans in the works, certainly a downtown a hotel, correct, which hopefully is well on the way. We'll see how that develops and how quickly it can happen, but that was going to provide at least some permanent housing for folks, and also a hotel kind of thing where people come in and out for an event and then leave and come back, whatever. The word venture, to me, implies a certain amount of risk, and you've kind of mentioned that a little bit. So is there a percentage of, and you said you work for the Generator company, does it always work, or are there times when you think something's really going to fire off and then it doesn't?
So I would say that more often than not, it does not work when you're working with super early ideation stage companies. That's why our focus is not to work with teams that are just figuring out whether they can even work as a team or figuring out what the right product is. We're working with teams that have found the product. Now they need acceleration to take it to market, to figure out what the right go-to-market strategy is, what partnerships they need, how they need, where and what type of capital they need to essentially scale. However, as an asset class as a whole, venture is definitely the riskiest asset class, but it also has the greatest upside.
And much as the same as people that put money in the stock market, the more risk you're willing to take, the potential for payoff is much greater. And so if you kind of take a real conservative view, you feel a little bit better about not losing, but you don't gain as much if things explode in a nice way.
Correct. And even if you look at the stock market or the gains that we have seen this year, it's typically came from the Mag 7 or the top 7 companies, which have been the Mang and Fang companies, the Metas, the Facebooks, or essentially the Airbnbs. And this year, as you can see, the rest of the gains that essentially came from were from tech companies that were venture-backed at some point. So their ceiling is much higher as opposed to a small business, for example.
So we're talking to Mose Cassaro from Cedar, who's in the venture capital business. And you came from where? You look very young. I'm not going to ask you necessarily how old you are, but you look pretty fresh-faced.
I came from New York City. I grew up on Long Island, New York, which is about 20, 25 minutes from the city. I'd grown up, I was more of a founder, and I kind of stumbled upon a startup when I was about 12 years old, scaled it, made a little bit of money, did some early work on YouTube this was about 2011, probably had to drop out of high school because my startup started scaling, decided to go straight back to college for one of two reasons at Hofstra University on Long Island. A, they had something called the Idea Hub, which was an incubator accelerator similar to what we're building, which was a New York State certified incubator. And also they had venture and entrepreneurship undergrad degrees. Built another startup there, got some angel funding, raised about $100,000, scaled it again. And then once I graduated, worked in investment banking briefly on startup M&A, which is mergers and acquisitions in the startup world. Got some later stage experience, became a venture scout for a couple venture capital funds, then joined another startup that we scaled in Denmark. We actually did a spinoff of Uber called Vigo, raised about a $55 million Series A round for that. And around the same time, I was raising a fund in the city, a venture fund, and working with some collaborators when COVID came around and the markets kind of slowed down, or markets became a little more unpredictable at the time. And around the same time, I ran into the opportunity with Cedar, and having my relationship with Generator, I knew that when I did a quick analysis of the state and this region, I knew this could really benefit from a larger accelerator, as well as having some venture funding come out of essentially not just stay in Chittenden County and support the founders all across Vermont as well.
No, we're glad you're here in Rutland County. Don't get me wrong. We've had enough at Chittenden County ruling the roost here. You mentioned COVID, and to me, one of the things that quickly was evident coming out of that was if you ever had invested in Zoom, you probably were doing pretty well.
Definitely. I would say COVID kind of gave room or validity to a lot of companies that were in a space or operating in a space where the usage was not there, and then their usage kind of hyper-scaled over a very short period of time. Some of them scaled back. However, Zoom became more of a norm. But during the same time, we called it ZIRP, which is a zero interest rate policy period, which was from 2021 to 2023 in the venture world, where the interest rates were really low. Venture funds were over deploying and giving startups more money than they should have raised at the time. Some startups ended up scaling sooner and more than they should have at the time. And now we're seeing some of those start to pull back and some of those startups start to struggle. As a new startup, this is one of the perfect times to be essentially building. Every time you come out of a downturn in the financial markets, it's typically A, cyclical, but B, any of the larger companies we see, I hate to go back to Meta and Airbnb again, but a lot of these startups and larger startups that succeeded came out in 2008, 2009, right after the last financial market crash. So I do think as a founder, it's a perfect time. As a venture capitalist, to be deploying now in this market, it's a perfect time. But from 2021 to 2023, it was a bit of a blurb.
So you mentioned the word scale a couple of times, and I just want to make sure I'm understanding that. What exactly does that mean?
So what I mean by scale and how I have been explaining it since I got here is essentially when a founder comes and pitches to me, and let's say if there's a bakery that wants to go from 10 users or 10 people coming in and buying bread loaves, and now they want to sell 10,000, they need more bakers, they need more stoves, they need more storefronts, raw material ingredients, and people walking in, foot traffic, and it has some sort of a shelf life. But if Facebook wanted to go from 10 users to 10,000, they probably needed 2 coders in a basement with a server and internet with enough bandwidth, and they're able to scale it. So our goal is to support founders that don't need $10 million to scale or 10 storefronts to scale, but a little bit of capital can provide enough injection for them to be able to sustain themselves for a decent period of time.
I assume there's a relationship, too, between the Federal Reserve and what you do for a living. As we record this again in late August, the job numbers came out last week, and it looks like, again, it's hard to predict all the time, but it looks like when the Federal Reserve gets together, I believe in September, there will probably be a 0.25%, maybe a 0.5%, but I'm betting it'll be more like a 0.25% lowering of the rate.
I think that's what a lot of us think in the industry as well, and that's what the markets are alluding towards. In the beginning, we thought that it would be a tougher crash, then everybody decided, the markets kind of indicated that it might be a softer landing. Recently, the talks of recession have came back up again. However, like you mentioned, if you look at the CPI or the core CPI data, it does look like we are moving towards some sort of a rate cut. What that is on basis points, we'll find out, but we're all looking forward to it. But as we are tied into the a bit on the Federal Reserve. We're also tied on the U.S. Treasury, and U.S. Treasury has came up with this program called the SSBCI program, where a lot of states have gotten funding for venture capital, and they are essentially being allocated by VITA, and they go to other venture funds that are within the state. So we're excited to work with them as well and be able to deploy some capital.
Yeah, I know a lot of folks are hoping that the interest rate goes down. I mean, it affects everything we do, from buying automobiles to everything else. But you have to sort of, and I understand, very slowly, thoughtfully, gradually make moves one way or the other. And, you don't want to have it drop by 1% because that would necessarily not be a good thing either.
Correct. I think that's one of the things that we've learned. I'm a strong believer that financial markets are A, cyclical, and B, if you see precedents, you'll be able to see a lot of this happen in the past. I do think that Jerome Powell is probably going to push towards maybe a half, like you mentioned, or 0.25. But a lot can change from now and then, especially being in a political year. And election year always has different effects on how the markets operate. That's
for sure. We now, both Republicans and Democrats have had their conventions, and so we'll see what happens here in the last, 70 days, 65 days left. Exactly. But yeah, the results of the November 5th election will probably be important, regardless of the way it goes. And, some of the turns will be good, some of them won't be. But as you say, and I think probably a lot of people who listen to this show every week have at least something invested in the market. And we've seen it when it goes down, and we've seen it when it comes back up. And if you're patient enough, I guess, and you're willing to sort of ride the crests all the time, you usually do pretty well.
I agree. I think it really comes down to conviction. If you're in it for a bit of a longer run, or you have strong conviction in what you're invested in, those ups and downs become a bit easier.
We're talking to Mose Cassaro from Cedar, and Chrispin White is with us as well. And we need to take our first break here on Catamount Community Connection, and we will do that and come back in just a minute. We're back on Catamount Community Connection. I'm your host, Brian Collamore. Each week we do this for an hour on Sundays, and our show brought to you again by the Rutland County Agricultural Society, which has brought you the Vermont State Fair at Rutland since 1846. The recently concluded 178th Vermont State Fair was here in Rutland, and extremely well attended. And on behalf of the board of directors of the Agricultural Society and Robert Congdon, who is the kind of the mouthpiece and the visual connection with that. Thank you all for your attendance this year at the Vermont State Fair. It really was incredible. That's something else, and we're talking with folks from Cedar in terms of cycles and how things come and go. And we've seen that the fair had some tough times back a few years ago, but it's on the way back. And there were people that attended this year that probably haven't been there in probably 10 years. And it was just great to see. I went down, I think, almost every day. Politically speaking, we had a booth there, and so we staffed that. And it was just nice to be able to walk around and see folks. And it was a good time. It just was a good time this year at the fair. So thank them for sponsoring the show. Let's turn our attention back to Chrispin White, if we could. We did mention the Whoopie Pie Festival, which is coming up on September 14th from noon until 5-ish. Yep. Don't forget to get there early. Yes. There'll be, pressure on where to park and how to get there and all that kind of thing. So we want to at least make sure that people know that they need to plan this. You can't get in the car at 5 noon and expect to park on Center Street because it isn't going to happen.
It's going to be closed. But one thing we will have available that day is free parking in the parking garage. So if there are people looking for parking spots, there will be plenty available there at no cost to everyone.
Okay. But we also want to mention the annual meeting,
correct?
Right?
Yes. Our annual meeting this year will be at the Paramount Theater on Wednesday, October 23rd from 5 until 7. We usually have our annual meeting in November, but this year we moved it up a little bit because we wanted to connect it with the pitch competition from Startup Rutland, which we'll talk about in a second. But every year for our annual meeting, it's an opportunity to get all of our community leaders together to really highlight a lot of the things that Cedar has been involved in over the past year. And this year is no different. We're going to start off with a wonderful networking opportunity. I look at the annual meeting, especially the first part of it, as a mixer, Cedar mixer on steroids. But we usually have anywhere from 200 to 250 community leaders there to really engage with each other, network, and really just enjoy the excitement and the positive things that have been happening in Rutland County. So this year is going to be the same. We're going to have that networking opportunity from 5 until 5:30, and then we will call the annual meeting to order. We will have our board president, Shana Loisel, take over the program. We will talk about a lot of the things that have been going on. We will vote in our new officers. We will introduce our staff, because at Cedar now we have about 10 staff members with Cedar and Startup Rutland and the Hub Co-works. And we will provide our awards. We always give out 4 awards at our annual meeting. And that's the Business Leader of the Year, Innovator of the Year, Community Leader of the Year, and our Volunteer of the Year, because we want to highlight what these people have done and the positive impacts they've had in our community. So we will have that available as well.
I'm guessing that a lot of the sort of interplay will take place on the stage.
It will be on the stage, correct.
I was going to think,
yes.
in terms of getting together with people, it'd be hard if you're in the audience part.
Right. We will be on the stage for the first part of the meeting. Once the actual meetings begins, we will have everybody go into the audience, and we'll start from there. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And again, this is important because, again, I want to make sure that people understand Cedar is the combination of a couple of organizations that existed prior to it. So CEDR stands for the Chamber and Economic Development of the Rutland Region, right. CEDRR. In the past, we had here in Rutland, as in most communities, a Rutland Region Chamber of Commerce at one point, and then we had this other entity called the Rutland Economic Development Corporation, or REDC, and it was the two that got together and decided, in a way, they were sort of doing similar activities and had similar goals. Why don't we just get together and everybody comes together and we can do it together? And so that's how this all came about.
Exactly.
So a lot of what happens at Cedar has to do with developing economic conditions that are good. And the chamber for years was sort of the place that you look for all the events that were going to happen in the Rutland region. So
and it's all, like you said, it's all intertwined. It's an opportunity for us as an organization to provide support and value to our business community, not only in Rutland City but throughout the entire county, but also working on economic development issues that will benefit this area, that brings in more jobs, that brings in more people. I mean, we're looking at a lot of businesses now that have so many different job openings. So one of our initiatives is our regional marketing initiative, where we're trying to bring more people to this area that can come in, bring their families, and realize that Rutland County is a great place to live, work, and play. And they can hopefully come in, fill some of these jobs that are open in some of these major businesses that we have in our community, and really engage themselves within the community and become a part of what we're trying to do here, which is to continue to support our business community and to continue to bring back vibrancy throughout the entire county. That's the voice of Chrispin White, who was hopefully very recognizable by now. You and I, this past week, were at an event with the governor. I don't remember what day it was, Tuesday or Wednesday. It was Wednesday. Yeah. Yes. And it was specifically focused on a community block grants that will allow housing to develop more quickly and easily in the region. So you mentioned that one of the prime functions of CEDR is to help businesses that are already here get even better and bigger, yes, and then attract some that aren't here yet to come. And so there's an obvious intersection between population growth. You know, when I came to Rutland in 1972, there were upwards of 24,000 people that lived here. We're down somewhere in the high 16,000s, I think, right now. Right. So we've had a downturn, and we need to get back to the low or mid-20s in terms of population. But in order to do that, you got to have a place for people to live. Correct. If there isn't a place for them to live, they're not going to want to. I mean, you can work from home in Long Island or Tennessee or wherever you happen to be,
But it's really not the same thing as actually living in a community
Correct.
and being part of it. So, yeah, I thought that was a great event. And,
definitely.
it was a small step. There were only, I'm trying to remember the number of households that we're talking about. It was teens, I think, maybe.
Yeah, exactly. With a scalable, I think they want to look at possibly 35 in total, but again, it will take time and quite a few years. Yes. Yeah.
So one of the highlights, I guess, for the annual meeting will be the startup, Rutland Startup, right? And we'll go back to Mose for that.
Yes. So as I previously mentioned about the Startup Rutland Accelerator that we're running, this is a 7-week program that is kicking off on September 5th. This will end with a showcase pitch event. This showcase pitch event, like Chrispin mentioned, will be a part of the annual meeting of CETA this year on October 23rd. I believe it's open to the public.
Yes, it is.
And our goal is essentially to have the founders that have gone through the acceleration process for the 7 weeks go on stage, pitch their progress, pitch what they're working on with stakeholders in the audience, with potential investors, other venture capitalists, our generator team, as well as all the chamber members and everybody that will be coming in and attending as well. We are looking to also have an Audience Choice Award, which will enable the audience to be able to be engaged and pick one of their winners, and those winners might be able to essentially get some monetary prizes as well. In addition to that, at the annual meeting, our goal is to showcase this and have a video that we're working on to essentially show what we're building, why we're building in it, how it'll impact Rutland, how it will support the founders here, and use this to run this program annually. So it's not a one-time thing. We're going to be running this accelerator program this year, next year, and the goal is to continue to do this.
Can you talk a little bit about the selection process, too, for this?
So our selection process for the accelerator for the startups is fairly simple in the sense of when we sit down, when we go over 50, 60 companies, we are looking at a couple bullet points. Number one is, can they succeed in Vermont or do something for Vermont in some capacity, and specifically for Rutland for us. And what I mean by that is there might be a startup that's working on something that can be applied to the hospitals here, that can be applied to the schools here. We're working with a few startups that are built using AI to essentially use language learning that can be utilized on the videos you watch on YouTube, etc. So our goal is to be able to pick products that can be applied locally, and the local folks here can actually see value from it. A. B. The second piece of the selection is, can we help them? So you might be a great startup, great founder, a great idea, but maybe the example that I gave is maybe you were Travis building Uber in 2009, and if you came to us, we would have told you it's a great idea probably. However, you need to be in a larger metro city. Everybody has their own car. No one's going to most likely call 1,000 rides a day. So probably not the best place to build. We wouldn't be able to help you a lot. And the third piece of that is sustainability. What's your runway? What's your burn rate? So in startup world, burn rate means how much money you're burning every month. If you burn, let's say, $5,000 a month, you're burning $60,000 a year. $100K will give you about an 18-month runway, roughly. That is a good enough burn rate for us to be able to support you financially, whether it's helping you get funding from local venture funds or from the fund that we're raising here. However, if you're a startup that requires $500,000 a month, and in a year you're going to burn through $6 million. The venture market in Vermont is not that mature as of yet. In Chittenden County, obviously, the folks there, whether it's Fresh Tracks or VSET, they've done incredible work. But as we start to support founders here, we want to make sure that we're able to help them just as much as they can help us. And obviously, one of the angles or lenses that we're putting on is making sure that these founders are coachable, in the sense of you might be a great founder and having worked in San Francisco or in New York City and with founders for over 10 years at this point. It's a people thing. This is a relationship business. It's not a transactional business. So we're just doing those relationship buildings for the past year and a half that we've been running this and doing the selection.
So let me go back to your first one. The second one was, can we help you? And then the third one is sustainability or burn rate.
Yep.
But the first piece, and I assume you've done some research or someone has,
yep,
and taken a look at categories of businesses and come up with maybe just off the top of my head, what I hear sometimes is people say there's really not like one store that sells shoes in Rutland. I mean, there are stores, McNeil and Reedy does, but they don't concentrate on that only.
Yep.
They sell clothing as well. There were businesses when I first came in '72 that did nothing but sell shoes. So maybe that's a category that would be at least possible for someone to come in. And on the other hand, maybe, and I don't want to again pick a bad category, but restaurants, maybe there's already enough restaurants, and so maybe you wouldn't necessarily want to add any more. And I don't know whether that's true. For all you restaurant owners, please don't think I'm being negative. I'm just picking two categories is what I'm trying to do.
No, I would say that that is typically the lens that we see it from. However, I will make the distinction that these are tech-enabled startups. It's less of brick-and-mortar storefronts. And none of these startups will potentially have a storefront or have a storefront. And it's more so, if I were to give an example, there's one startup that has been an early incubator contender and adopter of ours at the Hub and at Startup Rutland. Tacitly XR is using virtual reality to create a platform which is a SaaS, which is a software as a service platform, where they're building basically mock-ups of original devices that hospitals use. So it's for nurse training. So nurses, for example, they use cord cards to train. They have built, if you put their headset on, you'll be able to see a virtual cord card and you'll be able to train on that. Instead of a hospital only having 2 cord cards and 2 nurses being trained at a time, now they can have 20 nurses do the same thing. So it's more so a tech angle to a lot of these startups. There's another one we're working closely with that is potentially going to be one of the highest contenders selection. They're building a hard tech platform for water purification. There's another one that's building a software platform, again, for medication therapy management. So a lot of these startups, the goal is if we restrict ourselves to a brick and mortar business, then the revenue that they can make depends on foot traffic. This way you can be in startup at Rutland, you can be building in Rutland, but you can still have users from all over the U.S. and all over the world.
Okay. So that'll be something to watch. You mentioned a 7-week program, right?
Yep.
And at one point you'll pick somebody, or maybe more than one.
Correct. So we're putting out the press release next week, and we're picking 5 companies. There'll be 5 total companies that will go through the 7 weeks. September 5th is a kickoff when they'll be coming in. It'll be very white glove approach that we typically have at Generator when we run these programs all over the U.S. or internationally. From the kickoff, we go into one-on-one mentoring. We find mentors, and we actually pair them up with folks that are industry leaders, folks that have sold companies for hundreds of millions of dollars in their very vertical meaning in their industry, who've gone through the ringer and have ran into similar problems. In the startup world, we say that everyone's going to make problems. It's typically the person who makes them the quickest and iterates the quickest that ends up winning. And the job and our goal is to be able to put the right folks in front of them, in addition to providing support, in-kind services through the SBA grant that we have through the Chamber and through Startup Rutland, as well as the million in-kind services that I mentioned through Generator. And there's a lot of one-on-one mentoring, go-to-market strategizing. I personally like to roll up my sleeves and get to work myself. So a lot of these founders that are going through the program, I've worked with them for close to a year at this point already.
How do you find venture capitalists?
It's a very small blip on the larger map of the finance industry, I would say. Last year, there's only about 140 funds raised all over the U.S., so it's a very, very small category. As we work with the SSBCI program, I was told I'm the youngest person that was getting that allocation. So it's really hard to get in, but if you're in the industry, like everyone I know is probably a venture capitalist. They're all older, yes. A lot of them are in SF or in Boston or in New York, so it's a concentration in the larger cities. In Vermont, like I had mentioned, we do have a couple of funds from Fresh Tracks, Karn and the team T and Lee, TJ and Lee there are amazing, as well as Dudley Fund. VSET has a venture fund, which is also up in Burlington. So there's a few funds here, but their focus is a bit later stage. Majority of them, other than VSET, which is they come in at a stage where they're writing a $500K check and go up to some of them go up to $1.5 million, some of them go up to $2 million over the life of the investment. The fund that I'm raising, RDF Ventures, will be more so that early fund. In venture capital, we call something FOF, which is friends and family checks. In a state that's fairly smaller, the probability of founders coming up with ideas and raising a couple $100,000 from their family members is slightly lower than it would be in New York. So the goal is to provide that early capital injection for them to be able to get a little bit of a trampoline for their idea to validate it. And after that, seeing not only if they can raise funding locally, but our goal is to bridge the gap between the local entrepreneurial landscape and the venture landscape nationally.
So if someone is listening and wants to get involved with it, how do they get a hold of you to kind of get a direction here?
if somebody uses LinkedIn, they can find me on LinkedIn. It's Mose Cassaro. If they want to reach via email, my email with the chamber is mose@rutlandeconomy.com. I am open, and I'm working with founders that have super early ideas. Some folks come to me and they just pitch an idea and say, I don't even know if this is good enough to work on. So I'm always open to talk to teams, talk with folks. I probably work with maybe 500 founders a year, or interview at least through Generator when we're running these programs. In addition to on the venture side, on the fund side, we're also going to be supporting founders that come out of the accelerator, but also founders that are maybe a bit later stage and they're just looking for a capital injection all across the Vermont as well.
Okay. So you're, I assume, going to make a presentation at the annual meeting about all this, right?
Correct.
Because I'm trying to catch up with you.
Exactly.
You're like miles ahead of where I am right now, and I'm trying to ask intelligent questions, but I'm not sure I am. But
No, you definitely are. Those are great questions.
yeah, it's a fascinating thing to do. And I think, I'll speak for Lyle and Chrispin. We're lucky to have found you, especially at such a young age, I think. And hopefully you'll fall in love with Rutland and stay here for a long time and help a lot of people out.
I'm grateful to be part of this community. Like you mentioned, I feel like I'm already a part, in the sense of no part of me would probably want to leave. It's not just the opportunities, the people that I've met here. And like I mentioned, this is a relationship business and less of a transactional thing. So I love the fact that I can kind of make those connections, whether I'm meeting founders here and connecting them with my mentors in Europe or in New York or in San Francisco. The impact piece is what really brought me here, and that's what's really keeping me here.
Yeah, whether you grew up here, in other words, were born and raised here and stayed here, whether you came at a certain age, I came at 21 and just never wanted to leave. Yeah. And we've just had and I can't remember what the group was that said Rutland was like the best place in the world to live.
Yep.
So we have a lot of built-in advantages, a lot of them with nature and things. If you like to do stuff in the winter, there's sure a lot of stuff to do in the winter. If you like it in the summer, that's just as great. So yeah, hopefully we'll hold on to you for a little bit, Mose. Hold on to you.
I'm here.
Let me swing it back to Chrispin and see what else we have in terms of events coming up. We've mentioned the Whoopie Pie Festival, September 14th, noon to 5. Get there early. And it is like a massive block party, and we're hoping to break the world record with 1,100 plus pounds of whoopie pie, and maybe 7,000 people. I don't know
exactly. That's we're actually anticipating that many. So definitely get there early, because it's going to be a great time. One thing we're doing a little different this year. Last year, you had to buy your tickets once you arrived at the event. This year, we will have tickets available online prior to the event. So if people wanted to get their Whoopie Pie sample tickets early, they could go to RutlandWhoopiePieFest.com, and they can purchase their tickets online, and then we will have them available for them at our will call tent the day of the event. And that will alleviate a lot of the long lines that people encountered last year. So
yeah, you don't want to be 600 or 6,999 in line.
Not at all.
You'd like to be right at the first. Well, that's a great idea and a great change.
Definitely.
I'll just mention again, it's a family event, so don't feel that the kids are going to be like in the way or something. There's a lot of stuff for them to do, right?
Yes,
I'm assuming face painting and all that.
Magicians. Like I said, street performers. We're going to have kettle drummers, hula hoopers. It really is. There's something there for everyone. And in addition to the whoopie pies, we're going to have food trucks available, and really just anything and everything for a family to come down to and enjoy. And it's in conjunction with the Vermont Farmers Market as well. So that's a great cross section there, where everybody will be out that day and really enjoying being in downtown Rutland.
For sure. Okay, so that's the 14th, and then we mentioned the annual meeting coming up in October. We need to take our final break, and maybe when we come back, whatever you have later in the fall and even into the winter, we can talk about. And Mose, if there's anything else we need to get in touch with in terms of the venture capital world, we'll do that. Sounds good. That will be when we come back after this word. We're back on Catamount Community Connection. I'm Brian Collamore, your host for the 1 hour show each Sunday. Brought to you again by what was one of, if not the, most successful Vermont State Fairs, certainly in my memory, and I've been here since 72. But anyway, the show is brought to you by the Rutland County Agricultural Society, which brought you the Vermont State Fair at Rutland and the 178th Fair, now in the rear view mirror. But what a successful fair it was. And on behalf of the Board of Directors of the Ag Society, thank you one and all for attending this year's Vermont State Fair. We're talking today with Chrispin White, the events director at Cedar. And again, you all should know what that stands for by now. The Chamber and Economic Development of the Rutland region, and also Mose Cassaro, who is a venture capitalist. And we're lucky to have him. And he will be making his work known at the annual meeting coming up in October. Let's talk a little bit more, though, because an event as big as the Whoopie Pie Festival couldn't happen on its own. We have a bunch of people to thank, right?
Definitely, we do. I mean, we have a lot of sponsors for this event. Our premier sponsor is Casella Waste Systems, and we want to thank them for their continued support, in addition to all of our other sponsors as well. But Cedar hosts this event, but it really takes a community to bring it together. And I just want to give a shout out to a lot of our community partners that help us out. Dreammaker Bakers, obviously, they are the ones putting together the world's largest whoopie pie this year. But there are other organizations, Come Alive Outside, Carpenter and Costin, who helps us with the Green Street, Partners for Prevention, Wonder Feet Kids Museum, the Housing Trust, the Mint, who again is putting together for the first time a soapbox derby during the event, the Rutland Rec, Rutland Regional Medical Center that sponsors us every year, and Downtown Rutland Partnership. As a group, we really come together, and this is an event that we plan pretty much throughout the course of the year because it is such a large event. So we are appreciative of their assistance with the planning of this, and we hope that this is an event that we will continue to offer the community for years to come.
In case, and maybe there are people that feel this way, that there is some concern about all of this whoopie pie going to waste after the event is over.
Yes.
You guys have come up with a pretty good solution for that.
We have, and last year it worked out really well. We partnered with Brock. They allow us right after the event to box up the leftover whoopie pie. Dreammaker Bakers provides us with sheet boxes for cakes, and they cut up the whoopie pie, they put it in the boxes, and we immediately transport it over to the freezers over at Brock. And the following week, usually the Monday and Tuesday, I go out and deliver a lot of the leftover whoopie pie. Brock does keep a lot for their clientele, but we deliver them to the Rutland United Methodist Church, the Open Door Mission. This year we have the Pittsford Food Shelf, the Young at Heart Senior Center in Poultney, Vermont Farmers Food Center, and any other organization that really can benefit from getting some of this leftover whoopie pie. Once we have it in the freezer, Dreammaker Bakers tells us that they are able to be frozen for up to 30 days. So in order for us not to have any waste, if there are any other organizations who would like to receive some of this whoopie pie, they can reach out to me at Cedar, and I will gladly deliver it to them the following week.
I'm not sure whether the schools could ever get involved with that.
I mean, it really depends. And we looked at also senior centers as well, nursing homes and things of that nature. And there are some guidelines that we probably can't get past. but definitely we've reached out to the schools just to see if that's a possibility, and looking for other locations that might be viable. The Moose Club is another location that they will be receiving some as well, because they offered meals periodically throughout the course of the year.
Sure.
So, yeah.
All right. So those are the two, the annual meeting and the Whoopie Pie Festival. I know there are other mixers coming up and maybe some other events to talk about.
Yep. Well, our October mixer is going to be at Allen Pools and Spa. And that is a mixer that we do every year in partnership with them. They offer the event as Breast Cancer Awareness Month is in full bloom for that month, and they raise money every year for that wonderful cause. So they offer raffle tickets. They raffle off jacuzzi, hot tub, and every year it's a wonderful opportunity for people to come together to share their stories about breast cancer awareness and to raise money for that organization. We often partner with KPAA on that mixer, so we pull people from the Killington area, from Rutland community, and it's always a really well-attended event, and we raise quite a bit of money for that cause. So that's what we have available in October. And November, we usually have our annual meeting in November, so we don't have a mixer, but we moved it to October. So might be filling that spot in, but to date, we don't have a host for November. But December will be our annual mixer at Heritage Family Credit Union. Always a great mixer there. Usually have upwards of 200 people who attend that one, and it's a wonderful way to end out the year for our mixers, and a great opportunity for Heritage Family Credit Union to share all the wonderful things that they do for the community.
Yeah, for sure. I know the Allen family pretty well. We go back to, probably 40, 50 years. Mm-hmm. So thanks to Ed Allen,
yes,
who is running the company now. His brother Dan and his father Dan and I were great friends, and both have passed, but they do a great job. So that's great. And I have been to that one before. Mm-hmm. And as you mentioned, I think there's a lot of people that if they only go to one every year, they go to the one at Heritage Family.
Exactly.
That's amazing.
It
and so that'll be fun. Well, we've got about 7 minutes left. Mm-hmm. So, Mose, is there anything else that you wanted to mention today? I
think I would leave it off at, I would like to encourage folks to think like founders in the sense of like, this is a career path. It has been done in Rutland before. It's being done here again. While we speak, and it will continue to happen. And if anything, the Zoom comment you mentioned, we live in a tech-enabled world now. 20 years ago, the probability of you building a successful startup was tied to the larger cities and the San Franciscos, the Silicon Valleys, and the New Yorks. However, now the probability of you having a virtual team, maybe 3 of your teammates live here, and then you have somebody in San Francisco, you have somebody in New York or overseas. So I want to encourage folks to be able to do that. If you have a tech-enabled idea of a startup, maybe you're not sure if it's worth working on, maybe you don't know what the first step is or how to go from 0 to 1, I would encourage everybody to reach out to me. Again, my email is mose@rutlandeconomy.com. That is MOSE@rutlandeconomy.com. One thing I will say is when you are looking through these ideas, and one of the things that I've noticed having spoken to founders every year for such a long period of time, like the goal or the good founders or the good products essentially come from the initial goal is not a money grabber, like how can I get rich? It's typically creating value. Money will always be byproduct of creating value. If you can create value, if you're a baker, you make something really nice. If you can sell it to someone, they're paying you because you created value for them. Same thing applies online. And good products, like you didn't see an ad about Facebook. It was typically a friend telling you like, hey, I have Facebook, you should download Facebook too. So I think it's very easy to tell when you are working on an idea, but sometimes as a founder, you're so hyper-focused that you might be biased. So I'm open to listening to anything that anybody might want to pitch, whether it's via email or open for a chat. And lastly, I would like to thank the Chamber and Lyle and the whole team at the Chamber and our board at Startup Rutland for believing in my vision of wanting to partner with Generator and providing support every step of the way, from everything from logistical to operational to financial. And I'm excited for what we are building here, and I'm excited for everybody to see it in person on October 23rd.
Your view of creating value resonates very well with me. I spent a number of years here in radio in the advertising world, and that certainly has changed over the years for sure. But that was one thing that if you can create value for a particular business, your client, the rest of it really is easy to do. You're right. You're not trying to just make money. What you want to do is whatever that client is, you want to create value that I can provide to that client to make their business better and more profitable. And if you do, they don't care about how much money they're going to have to spend to do it, as long as there's a margin there for them.
Yeah, so, that's essentially what it is.
Yeah, that's great. Well, good luck.
Thank you.
I'll be attending the annual meeting if possible, and look forward to seeing your presentation and hearing it again. But you're a very impressive guy, I got to say. Very impressive guy. Yeah. Chrispin, the last couple of minutes is yours.
Okay. Just to go back to the annual meeting, it is open to the public. There is no charge to get in. And again, wonderful opportunity to engage with a lot of people within our community, to share stories and then to see what's going on at the pitch competition. So definitely feel free to come and join us on October 23rd. And Whoopie Pie Festival, Saturday, September 14th. Again, it's going to be a wonderful event. Definitely get there early. Really bring the family because it's going to be a wonderful day. I'm guaranteeing the weather as we speak. But definitely, if people want to purchase tickets early, go to rutlandwhoopiepiefest.com. They can purchase their tickets online. We also have a few volunteer opportunities available. They can go to that same website to see what opportunities are available. If anybody's interested in wearing a Whoopie Pie costume, we have 3 volunteer slots available throughout the event for somebody to do that. So feel free to reach out if you're interested. But again, we are looking forward to a very exciting event where Dreammaker Bakers is looking to create the world's largest Whoopie Pie to beat the record of 1,062 pounds.
Okay. We got just enough time, I think, because membership is always important to you as well.
Correct.
Where are we in terms of membership, and how do they become a member of Cedar?
To become a member, we are looking at revamping a lot of our member benefits. And one of the pieces of my job is to go out really to talk to businesses, find out what their needs are, and see how we can support them. In order to be a member, they can go online to our website and really look at all the benefits that we have to offer. But what I would suggest is scheduling a meeting so I can come meet with you, sit down, and really talk about the things that we can do and how we can partner with each other. We have over 300 members now throughout Rutland County, and not really looking to expand as much as really provide support to those who are in need. So feel free to reach out to me. I'll schedule a meeting, come meet you where you are, and we can sit down and just have a conversation about how we can work together to try to continue to make sure that our business community is successful and is as vibrant as it can be.
All right. Chrispin White and Mose Cassaro, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having us.
Love to have you back at some point.
All right.
And we will see all of you next Sunday on Catamount Community Connection.